Welcome back, and thank you so much for staying with us as we continue to tell your story. Now, the Supreme Court of Appeal has dismissed with cost the appeal of Cash Paymaster Services and ordered it to repay the 316 million rand to the South African Social Security Agency, SASSA.
The court found that CPS's actions were opportunistic and that no lawful basis was followed for additional payments in 2014. CPS approached the Supreme Court of Appeal to challenge a High Court ruling ordering it to pay back 316 million rand to the Social Security Agency.
It received the monies in 2014 after claiming that it had enrolled more grants recipients than it had been contracted to provide services for. The Supreme Court of Appeal also ordered CPS to pay the legal costs of civil society organization Corruption Watch, including those of the two council. Corruption Watch initially took both CPS and SASSA to court to challenge the decision.
This judgment has been written by Justice Blasket for a unanimous court, and he makes the following order. 1. The appeal is dismissed. 2. The appellant is directed to pay the third respondent's costs, including the cost of two counsel. I hand down the judgments.
So that's the judgment from the Supreme Court. To get a reaction on this ruling, we're now joined by Corruption Watch lawyer Caroline James. Thanks so much indeed for joining us. Your reaction to this judgment by the Supreme Court?
Well, thank you so much for having me. Corruption Watch is very excited by this judgment and really sees it as a vindication of the work that Corruption Watch has done as a watchdog to ensure that payments made from state entities to private companies like CPS follow the correct procedures and that there are no strange payments made without justification or without following lawful procurement policies.
Take us back to how it is that you ended up having to be the person to take this matter to court. I mean, SASSA is supposed to be looking after our interests. Shouldn't they have been the one demanding their money back from CPS?
Absolutely, and this case has quite a strange beginning because it came about when CPS's parent company, Net1, had released a statement, as all stock exchange listed companies are required to do, and had released this news report saying that CPS had received a payment of 316 million. And Corruption Watch saw this report and thought that the payment seemed out of order and not in accordance with the contract that had initially been signed between the two parties. And so requested further information on it, and all the information we received, rather grudgingly from both SASSA and CPS, indicated that there was something strange about this payment, and it was that motivated us to take it to court. And initially, SASSA maintained that the payment was correct and that they had followed correct procedures and that all was above board. And it was only before the Supreme Court of Appeal that SASSA indicated that with a change in personnel in the department, that they had now changed positions and agreed with the High Court that the payment was unlawful and that CPS needed to pay the money back to SASSA.
So what sense did that give you that SASSA was hell-bent on making sure that this payment stood?
I think it's very difficult to understand the relationship between SASSA and CPS, and this judgment has certainly, if you read the Supreme Court of Appeal's judgment, it demonstrates the sort of quite strange insistence by SASSA that initially everything was above board, and from CPS that they were entitled to the money, and then as the court has demonstrated how clearly it was that CPS certainly was not entitled to this payment of 316 million. And I suppose we can only be grateful that SASSA realized and changed their position and indicated their intention to abide by the decision, and hopefully that represents a change in guard and a change in approach at SASSA, that perhaps they are more committed to their constitutional obligations, which were highlighted by the Supreme Court of Appeal, to deliver a social security system that's got integrity and that is financially responsible to ensure that social grants are given to those who are most in need.
Well, I suppose the public can thank you for saving us 316 million rand, but I guess there must be a concern that we need watchdogs such as yours to oversee those people that are supposed to be protecting us.
Absolutely, and I think this case definitely does indicate and represent the important role that organizations like Corruption Watch plays, but it also demonstrates how precarious this sort of watchdog and accountability system is. If it requires organizations like us who are not very, not particularly well resourced and have a lot of work and many hardworking individuals, but it was almost sort of fortuitous that we found this report that indicated this payment. And I think you're right. It is not necessarily the responsibility of civil society to ensure that that monies paid from state entities follow correct procedures. And we would hope that the internal state organizations would find these missed payments and ensure that there is proper integrity in the financial systems within the organization, so that organizations like Corruption Watch don't have to play the same watchdog role that we are at the moment.
Do you believe that anybody at SASSA should be held personally perhaps responsible or liable to what happened?
I think that's difficult to say, and it's certainly not the information that we have. What we were focusing on was the legality of the contract and the legality of the procurement process that had been followed in granting the payment of 316 million. Again, that may not be the role of civil society to follow up on that, and there should be internal processes, whether it's civil or criminal, to ensure that the people that were responsible for allowing this payment to go through and to not check and ensure accountability within SASSA are held to account. And we would hope that there would be a system of accountability within government to ensure that that does happen.
So is this the end of the matter now, or do you think CPS might still want to take it to a higher court if that's even possible?
I think at the moment your guess is as good as mine. We haven't had any indication that CPS will appeal it. For us, we would hope that this is the end of the matter. This is a very strong ruling from the Supreme Court of Appeal. It was unanimous, and it was very clear that there was no justification for the payment to be made to CPS. And we would hope that that's the end of the matter, but we will have to wait and see to see if CPS do appeal it.
All right, so Caroline James, thanks very much indeed for joining us. And again, the public have you to thank for making sure that these monies wrongfully enriching this company are brought back into public coffers. Thanks so much indeed for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Mopping up operation.